In the sacred lands of the Apache people, where ancient spirits whisper through juniper trees and mountain streams carry stories of old, a wounded warrior faces a fate worse than death. Hunted by U.S. Army soldiers who brand him deserter and his own people who mark him oath-breaker, he stumbles through the blood-red canyons of the Chiricahua Mountains. His strength fading, his spirit broken, he collapses at the edge of his world. But destiny has other plans. When a tribal healer finds him, her wisdom guided by the sacred falcon, she offers more than just medicine. Through quiet ceremonies and ancient remedies, she awakens something long dormant in his warrior heart. But can love truly heal a man pursued by two forces that will never stop hunting him? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The broken arrow lay in the dust, its shaft splintered where Running Wolf had snapped it across his knee. Each half told its own story, one of warrior pride, the other of impossible choice. He had carried this arrow since his first hunt at 13 summers, when his grandfather had blessed it with sacred tobacco and eagle feathers. Now, at 35, he used its broken pieces to mark his path of shame. His calloused fingers traced the arrow's jagged edge as he crouched behind a limestone outcropping. The morning sun cast long shadows across the canyon floor, each one a potential enemy. His parched throat ached for water, but moving toward the stream would mean exposing himself to the army patrol he'd spotted an hour ago. The irony wasn't lost on him. 6 months earlier, he had worn their blue uniform, served as their scout, bridged 2 worlds. Lieutenant Matthews had called him their most valuable interpreter, praised his ability to track and understand both the Army's ways and his people's paths. But that was before the massacre at White River. Running Wolf closed his eyes, but the memories came anyway. The orders had been clear: locate a band of Apache families who had fled the reservation. Simple reconnaissance, Matthews had said. No engagement, no bloodshed. But when they found the camp, everything changed. He still heard the lieutenant's whispered commands to the other soldiers, saw the gleam in their eyes as they chambered their rounds. "These are women and children," Running Wolf had protested, his voice low but firm. "They left because there was no food. The agents sold their rations and left them to starve." Matthews had turned to him, moonlight catching the brass buttons of his uniform. "Orders are orders, Scout. Stand down or be counted among them." In that moment, Running Wolf felt the weight of every promise he'd ever made. To the Army, to his people, to himself. The snap of his bowstring as he loosed an arrow into Matthews's shoulder still echoed in his dreams. It had given the families time to scatter into the night, but it had also marked him forever, traitor to the Army, oath-breaker to his tribe for having served them in the first place. Now he moved like a shadow through his ancestral lands, avoiding the game trails where trackers would look first. His wounds from the initial escape had healed poorly. A bullet graze along his ribs, a deep cut on his thigh from a cavalry saber. Each step sent fire through his muscles, but he pushed on. The Chiricahua Mountains held secret places, caves and canyons, known only to those who had lived here for generations. The sound of horses' hooves on stone made him freeze. 3 riders passed below his position, their army uniforms dusty but unmistakable. They moved with the confidence of men who knew their prey was weakening. Behind them, 2 Apache trackers. Followed, men from his own band, their faces painted for the hunt. His heart ached at the sight of them. Once they had been his brothers in the warrior society. Now they tracked him with the same dedication they would show hunting a wounded wolf. Running Wolf touched the medicine pouch at his waist, feeling the sacred herbs and small carved fetishes within. His grandmother had given it to him the day he became a warrior, telling him it would protect his spirit even when his body failed. He hadn't understood then. Now, as exhaustion dragged at his limbs and fever burned in his wounds, he finally grasped her wisdom. The riders passed, but he waited another hour before moving. Each step had to be planned, each movement considered. He had learned to think like the prey animals, the deer, the rabbit, the fox. They survived by understanding that every sound could mean death, every shadow could hide a hunter. As the sun climbed higher, the heat became unbearable. His water had run out 2 days ago, and the fever made his thoughts wander. Twice he caught himself walking in circles, following tracks that were his own. The mountains seemed to shift and dance before his eyes, the red rocks bleeding into the sky until he could no longer tell where earth ended and heaven began. When he stumbled, the ground rose up to meet him with surprising gentleness. Or perhaps he was simply too weak to feel the impact. The broken arrow slipped from his fingers, its halves rolling away into the dust. Above him, a falcon wheeled against the azure sky, its cry carrying on the wind like a song from the spirit world. Running, Wolf tried to rise, but his body refused to obey. The sun burned his face, and he tasted blood where he had bitten his tongue. Soon the hunters would find his trail, would follow it to this place. He touched his knife, still sharp in its sheath. Better to die by his own hand than face the army's noose or his tribe's judgment. But as his fingers closed around the bone handle, a shadow fell across his face. Through fever-blurred vision, he saw a figure outlined against the sun. For a moment, he thought it was his grandmother's spirit, come to guide him to the afterlife. Then soft hands touched his face, and a woman's voice spoke in the old language, words of healing and hope. "Be still, warrior," she said. "The spirits have led me to you for a reason." The last thing he saw before consciousness fled was a falcon, feather in her hair, swaying gently in the desert wind. The medicine pouch rested heavily against Morning Star's hip as she worked, its contents clinking softly with each movement. Within its deerskin folds lay the sacred herbs of her people, sage for cleansing, cedar for protection, yarrow for healing wounds, and medicines known only to those who walked the healer's path. But today she had added something new, a small clay vessel of spiderweb powder gathered in the pre-dawn hours when the dew made the webs visible like strands of moonlight. The wounded warrior before her burned with fever, his skin hot beneath her touch. In his delirium, he spoke of blood and betrayal, of choices that tore a man's soul in two. She understood such wounds. They went deeper than flesh, reaching into the spirit itself. These were the kinds of injuries her grandmother had taught her to heal, though few now remembered the old ways. The Chiricahua Mountains rose around them like ancient guardians, their red stone faces carved by wind and time into shapes that spoke of the Creator's hand. Here, in a hidden canyon where springs bubbled up from deep within the earth, Morning Star had made her healing place. Few knew of its existence, a blessing now, as she tended to a man hunted by both her people and the blue-coated soldiers. She worked methodically, cleaning his wounds with spring water blessed with prayer. The bullet graze along his ribs had festered, angry red lines spreading from its edges like the rays of a deadly sun. The saber cut on his thigh was cleaner but deep, the kind of wound that would cripple a man if not properly tended. As she worked, she sang the healing songs her grandmother had taught her, her voice barely more than a whisper on the wind. The falcon she called brother swooped low over the canyon rim, its cry a warning. Morning Star paused in her work, listening with all her senses to the mountain's voice. The bird had been her companion since she was a girl, appearing to her during her medicine vision quest. Its keen eyes now served as her sentinel, watching for those who would bring harm to her patient. She heard them before she saw them, the sound of horses picking their way carefully down a nearby trail. Morning Star quickly gathered her supplies, tucking them back into the medicine pouch. The warrior stirred at her movement, but she pressed a gentle hand to his chest. "Be still," she whispered in their native tongue. "The hunters pass near." Through the screen of juniper branches she had woven as cover, Morning Star watched the search party move through the canyon below. She recognized 2 bears among them, one of the tribe's most skilled trackers. His eyes scanned the rocky slopes with the patience of a mountain lion. Behind him rode 3 army soldiers, their blue uniforms dark with sweat. "The trail is old here," Two Bears said in English, his voice carrying clearly in the still air. "He moves like a ghost through the stones." One of the soldiers spat into the dust. "Ghost or not, he's bleeding. No man can run forever with wounds like that." "This one might," Two Bears replied, and Morning Star heard something like respect in his voice. He was trained by both worlds. The soldiers moved on, but Two Bears lingered, his gaze sweeping the canyon one last time. For a heart-stopping moment, his eyes seemed to fix on her hiding place. Then the falcon cried again, drawing his attention upward, and the moment passed. Morning Star sent a silent prayer of thanks to the spirits as Two Bears turned his horse to follow the soldiers. When they were gone, she returned to her patient. His fever had risen again, and he thrashed weakly against the blanket she had laid over him. From her medicine pouch, she drew out the spider web powder, mixing it with crushed yarrow and a few drops of spring water. This was old medicine, learned from her grandmother who had learned it from hers, going back to the time when their people first came to these mountains. "Your body fights itself," she murmured as she worked the poultice into his wounds, "like your spirit, torn between 2 worlds. But here, in this sacred place, you may find healing for both." The day wore on, sun and shadow dancing across the canyon walls as Morning Star continued her work. She knew the risks she took in helping him. By the laws of both peoples, she should turn him over to face judgment. But something in his face, in the way he had protected those families at White River, spoke to her heart. Her grandmother had taught her that healing was not just about mending flesh, it was about making whole what had been broken in body and spirit alike. As evening approached, she prepared a tea of willow bark and desert sage, supporting his head so he could drink. His eyes flickered open briefly, fever-bright but more focused than before. "Why?" he rasped in their language. "Why?" "Help a man marked for death." Morning Star touched the medicine pouch at her hip, feeling the power of generations of healers within it. "Because the spirits led me to you," she answered. "And because sometimes the bravest warriors are those who choose to break one oath to keep a greater one." He tried to say more, but exhaustion pulled him back into unconsciousness. Morning Star arranged her blanket more comfortably around him and settled in to watch as the stars began to appear above the canyon walls. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, more search parties, more difficult choices. But for now, in this moment, she was exactly where the spirits meant her to be. The falcon landed silently on a nearby boulder, its fierce eyes reflecting the last light of day. Morning Star acknowledged its presence with a slight nod. They were both guardians now, watching over a warrior who had dared to challenge the boundaries. Between worlds, in her medicine pouch, the herbs and sacred objects shifted slightly, as if stirred by an unseen wind. The old powers were awakening, preparing for whatever lay ahead. The falcon feather in Morning Star's hair caught the first light of dawn, its iridescent edges shimmering like water. She had earned it 5 summers ago, when she completed her healing vision quest. Now it served as both ornament and talisman, a reminder of the thin line between the physical world and the spirit realm she walked as a healer. Running Wolf's fever had broken in the night, but healing brought its own dangers. With awareness would come questions, perhaps even fear. She had seen it before in wounded animals, the moment when survival instinct overcame pain, turning them desperate and unpredictable. She was grinding herbs with a stone mortar when his eyes opened, clear and alert for the first time. His hand moved instantly to where his knife should have been. "Your weapons are safe," she said softly in their language, continuing her work. "But you won't need them here." He studied her with the calculating gaze of a warrior, taking in every detail of her appearance and their surroundings. "I know you," he said finally. "You're Morning Star, old Spotted Owl's granddaughter. And you are Running Wolf who walks between worlds." She set aside her mortar and pulled out a water skin. "Drink slowly. The fever has left you weak." He accepted the water with hands that trembled slightly, though his pride made him try to hide it. "Why haven't you turned me in? Surely you know the price on my head." Morning Star touched the falcon feather in her hair, drawing strength from its presence. "I know many things. I know that you saved 12 children and 7 women at White River. I know that you chose conscience over duty." She met his gaze steadily. "And I know that not all wounds can be seen on the surface." A shadow crossed his face. "Some wounds shouldn't be healed. Some men deserve their scars. That is not for you or me to decide." She moved closer, checking the poultice on his thigh wound. "The spirits guide our paths if we have the wisdom to listen." He caught her wrist as she worked, his grip firm but not threatening. "And what do your spirits say about harboring a traitor?" The falcon cried out from above, and Morning Star smiled. "They say that truth is like water in the desert. It takes many forms, but all of them sustain life." She felt his grip relax slightly, saw something shift in his eyes. Years of training as both warrior and army scout had taught him to read people as clearly as tracks in the sand. Now he was reading her, weighing her words against his own understanding of the world. "Your grandmother," he said slowly. "She was the one who helped my sister birth her first child when the army doctor said neither would survive." Morning Star nodded. "She taught me that healing knows no boundaries. Apache, white man, friend, enemy. Pain speaks the same language in all of them." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. She was a wise woman, but wisdom didn't protect her from the fever that took her. "No," Morning Star agreed, gently freeing her wrist from his grasp to continue tending his wound. "Just as your strength couldn't protect those families from hunger on the reservation, we all have our limitations. The trick is knowing when to accept them and when to fight against them." The morning deepened around them, sun warming the red stones until they glowed like embers. Running Wolf watched her work in silence, his warrior's discipline warring with exhaustion and pain. Finally, he spoke again. "There will be more search parties. 2 bears never gives up a trail. Then we will have to be smarter than 2 bears." She reached up and plucked the falcon feather from her hair, holding it out to him. "Take this. Among our people, it's believed that falcon medicine grants clear vision in times of darkness." He stared at the feather as if it might burn him. "I can't accept this. It's your medicine, earned through your quest. Medicine is meant to be shared when needed." She placed the feather in his palm and closed his fingers around it. "My brother. Falcon will still watch over us, whether I wear his feather or not." As if in response, the great bird swooped low over their shelter, its shadow passing like a blessing. Running Wolf's hand tightened around the feather, and Morning Star saw tears in his eyes that he quickly blinked away. "I don't deserve your help," he whispered. "I betrayed both my peoples. I broke oaths sworn before the Creator." Morning Star gathered her medicines, tucking them away with the quiet efficiency of long practice. "Perhaps it's not about deserving. Perhaps it's about becoming who we're meant to be, even when that path leads us away from everything we thought we knew." She saw her words strike home, saw him turn them over in his mind like stones in a stream. The warrior in him wanted to reject such philosophy, to cling to the stark lines of duty and honor he'd been taught. But the man beneath the warrior, the one who had risked everything to save innocent lives, recognized a deeper truth. "Rest now," she said, rising to check their surroundings. "Tonight we'll need to move. I know a place higher in the mountains, where even 2 bears won't think to look." As she stepped out of their shelter, Running Wolf called after her softly. "Morning Star, thank you, not just for the healing, but for—" He trailed off, gesturing with the falcon feather. She understood what he couldn't say. "Thank you for seeing me as I am, not as what others have branded me. Thank you for offering hope when I'd lost my way. Thank you for reminding me that even broken oaths can lead to unbroken promises." "Sleep," she said again, and this time he obeyed, the falcon feather still clutched in his hand like a lifeline between two worlds. The brass military badge caught the firelight, its surface dulled by years of wear and a thin coating of red desert dust. Running Wolf turned it over in his hands, remembering the day Lieutenant Matthews had pinned it to his uniform. "First Apache to earn this," Matthews had said, pride and condescension mixed in his voice. Now the badge was just another weight. In his medicine pouch, another reminder of a life torn in two. "You were with them for 5 years," Morningstar said softly from across the small fire. They had moved higher into the mountains as planned, finding shelter in a cave she knew from her healing journeys. Outside, the wind sang through the canyon, masking any sounds that might betray their presence. 5 years, 2 months, and 14 days, he replied, his voice distant. "Long enough to learn their ways, to believe I could bridge the gap between their world and ours." He gave a bitter laugh. "Long enough to forget that some gaps aren't meant to be bridged." Morningstar added a handful of sweet sage to the fire, its smoke rising like prayers to the cave's roof. "Tell me," she said simply. Running Wolf clutched the badge tighter, its edges pressing into his palm. "I was young, full of ideas about change and progress. The reservation was crushing our people's spirit, but I thought if I could work with the army, help them understand us better." He shook his head. "They gave me a uniform, taught me to read and write their language, had me translate their orders to our people. I told myself I was helping, making things easier for both sides. And were you? For a time, I prevented misunderstandings, helped negotiate better rations, even convinced them to allow some traditional ceremonies." The badge felt heavier with each word. "But then came the drought, the crops failed, and the Indian agent—" His voice hardened. "He sold our food supplies, claimed they were lost in transit. Children began dying of hunger." Morningstar's eyes reflected the firelight, deep wells of understanding. "That's when the families fled." "Yes, 12 families, slipping away in the night. The army couldn't allow it, said it would encourage others to leave, destroy the reservation system they'd built." His fingers traced the badge's worn surface. "Lieutenant Matthews chose me for the search party because I knew the old trails, knew how our people think when they're running. But you didn't expect them to order a massacre." "No, or maybe I did deep down, but couldn't admit it to myself." Running Wolf tossed the badge aside, hearing it clink against the stone floor. "I'd seen the signs. Matthews growing harder, the new orders from Washington about making examples of resistors. I just didn't want to believe they'd murder women and children." Morningstar was quiet for a long moment, stirring the fire with a stick. "My husband was killed by soldiers," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. 3 summers ago at Cedar Creek. He was gathering healing herbs for me, carrying no weapons. They shot him because he wouldn't drop to his knees fast enough when they ordered him to." Running Wolf felt the words like physical blows. "I remember that day. I wasn't there, but I heard the reports. They claimed he was armed, scouting for a war party." "I know, I read the report myself, one of the few times I've been grateful for learning their written words." She looked up at him, her eyes free of accusation. "That's why I understand your choice at White River. Sometimes we must break one trust to keep a deeper one." The wind outside rose to a howl, and somewhere in the darkness a coyote called to its mate. Running Wolf found himself studying morning, Star's face in the flickering light, seeing past her beauty to the strength beneath. She had every reason to hate him, to turn him over to either army or tribe. Instead, she offered healing, not just for his body but for his spirit. "After I shot Matthews," he continued, the words coming easier now, "I led the families to a safe canyon, showed them how to cover their tracks. Then I drew the pursuit away, making sure my trail was obvious enough to follow. I thought, if I could just keep the soldiers focused on me long enough, the families would make it to safety. They did," Morningstar said. "They reached the western bands 2 moons ago. My cousin's wife sent word through the medicine trading routes. Relief washed through him, so strong it made him dizzy. Then it was worth it. All of it. The running, the wounds, the shame of being branded traitor. Those children will live. Morning Star rose gracefully, moving to check his healing wounds. Her touch was professional but gentle, and Running Wolf found himself acutely aware of her nearness. The spirits rarely waste pain, she said as she worked. Every scar teaches, if we're willing to learn. A shout echoed in the distance, faint, but clear in the night air. Both of them froze, listening intently. After a moment, horses' hooves could be heard on the rocky trail below. Morning Star moved silently to the cave's entrance, peering out into the darkness. "Army patrol," she whispered. "3 riders, moving west. They'll pass below us." Running Wolf started to rise, but she pressed him back with a firm hand. "Be still. The cave is well hidden and the wind covers any sound. Besides," she smiled, slightly, "my brother Falcon has led them on a false trail all day." As if on cue, they heard the birds cry, distant but distinct, drawing the riders' attention away from their shelter. Running Wolf found himself smiling despite the danger. "Your grandmother taught you well, not just in healing but in survival. The two are often the same." She returned to the fire, adding more sage to the flames. "Now rest. Your body is still fighting the fever, and we may need to move again before dawn." He wanted to argue, to insist he could take watch, but exhaustion dragged at him like weights. As he settled back against his blanket, his hand found the discarded badge, cold now in the darkness. Without thinking, he held it out to Morning Star. "Take it," he said. "Let it be a reminder that even those who seem most lost can find their way back to truth." She accepted the badge slowly, its brass surface catching the firelight one last time. "Not back," she corrected softly. "Forward. We never return to what we were. We can only become what we are meant to be." Running Wolf closed his eyes, feeling the truth of her words settle into his bones like medicine. The last thing he heard before sleep took him was her voice, soft and low, singing an ancient healing song to the night. The healing bowl was ancient, its clay surface worn smooth by generations of medicine women's hands. Dark stains marked its interior where countless herbs had been ground and mixed, each one adding its own story to the vessel's history. Morning Star had inherited it from her grandmother, who had received it from hers, reaching back to a time when the people first learned the secrets of healing from the mountain spirits. Dawn painted the cave walls with pale gold as she prepared. The morning medicines. Running Wolf watched her work, noting how her movements seemed to flow like water, each gesture precise and purposeful. The bowl rested in her lap, cradled as carefully as a newborn child. "This mixture is different," he observed, catching the sharp scent of unfamiliar herbs. "More bitter." "Your body is stronger now," she replied, grinding dried leaves with a smooth river stone. "Strong enough for deeper medicine." She paused, studying his face. "But first we must talk about the dreams." Running Wolf stiffened slightly. In the night, he had called out several times, his voice thick with fear and regret. "Dreams pass like morning mist," he said dismissively. Morning Star continued her grinding, but her eyes held his. "Not these dreams. These come from wounds that haven't healed, wounds no ordinary medicine can touch." She reached into her medicine pouch and withdrew a small bundle wrapped in buckskin. Unwrapping it carefully, she revealed a handful of dark, twisted roots that seemed to pulse with their own inner light in the dawn shadows. "Vision root," Running Wolf breathed, recognizing the sacred medicine. "But that's only used in healing ceremonies, yes." She added a small portion to the bowl. "Your body is mending, but your spirit remains torn. The root will help you face what haunts your dreams." He pushed himself up straighter, ignoring the protest from his healing wounds. "I can't. Vision root shows truth, strips away all defenses. I'm not," he swallowed hard, "I'm not ready to see myself that clearly." None of us are ever ready, she said softly, adding spring water to the mixture. That's why the spirits send us guides when the time comes. The healing bowl seemed to grow warmer in her hands as she stirred the medicine, ancient clay absorbing the power of the herbs. Outside, the falcon circled the cave entrance, its cry echoing off the canyon. Walls like a summons. Your grandmother, Running Wolf said hesitantly, she used this same bowl when she healed my sister. Morningstar nodded. And when she healed your father's arrow wound and your cousin's fever. The bowl remembers them all. Each healing adds, and to its medicine. She lifted the bowl, offering it to him. The mixture within was dark as mountain shadows, flecked with bits of herb that caught the morning light like stars. Running Wolf stared at it, feeling the weight of choice pressing down on him. What if, he cleared his throat, what if what I see destroys what little honor I have left? Honor isn't something that can be taken from us, she answered. Only given away. And you haven't given yours away. You've transformed it into something deeper than mere duty. Her words stirred something in him, a truth he'd been afraid to acknowledge. Slowly, he reached for the bowl, his hands steadier than he expected. As his fingers touched the ancient clay, he felt a subtle warmth flow up his arms, as if the vessel itself welcomed his touch. Will you... He hesitated, then forced himself to continue. Will you stay? While the medicine works. Morningstar's smile was gentle, but held no pity. The healer always stays with the seeker. That is the old way. He lifted the bowl to his lips, the bitter taste of the medicine flooding his mouth. The vision root's power worked quickly, making the cave walls breathe and shift around him. Morningstar's voice seemed to come from very far away. Let the medicine take you where it will. Don't fight the visions. They are messages from your own spirit, showing you what needs to be healed. The world dissolved into swirling patterns of light and shadow. Running Wolf found himself moving through memories like smoke. His childhood in the mountains, his years with the army, the fatal night at White River. But now he saw each moment with new clarity, understanding how each choice had led him not away from his true path, but toward it. He saw Lieutenant Matthews not as a betrayer, but as a man trapped by his own fears and prejudices. He saw the families he'd saved not as burdens of guilt, but as seeds of hope planted in fertile ground. And he saw himself not as a man divided, but as a bridge between worlds. Scarred and weathered perhaps, but still standing. Through it all, Morningstar's presence anchored him, her soft singing weaving through the visions like a golden thread. The healing bowl in his hands pulsed with generations of medicine, each beat matching his heart's rhythm. When the visions finally began to fade, tears streaked his face, but his spirit felt lighter than it had in years. Morningstar sat beside him, one hand resting lightly on his arm. The healing bowl, now empty, seemed to glow with an inner light in the strengthening dawn. "What did you see?" she asked softly. Running Wolf took a deep breath, his voice rough with emotion. I saw that sometimes the greatest honor lies in breaking the old bonds to forge new ones. That what I thought was betrayal was actually loyalty to a deeper truth." She nodded, her eyes bright with understanding. "And the dreams that haunted you, they're still there," he admitted. "But now I see them as teachers, not tormentors. Each one shows me a piece of the path I need to walk." Morningstar took the bowl from his trembling hands, wrapping it carefully in a soft hide. "The medicine has done its work then. Rest now. Let the visions settle into your bones like morning dew into thirsty earth." As she rose to store the healing. Bowl away, Running Wolf caught her hand. The touch was brief, but charged with meaning, like lightning in a summer storm. No words were needed. The medicine had shown him the truth of his heart, and he saw the same truth reflected in her eyes. Outside, the falcon's cry merged with the wind's song, and for the first time since White River, Running Wolf felt truly whole. The tribal drum's deep voice echoed through the canyon, its rhythm matching the pulse of the hunter's moon rising above. The mountain peaks. Morning Star had brought it from its hiding place in the rocks, explaining that on such nights, when the moon was full and the spirits walked close to the earth, the sound of a drum would raise no suspicion. All across the mountains, other drums would be speaking, calling to the ancestors for guidance. Running Wolf sat at the cave's entrance, his wounds finally healed enough to allow him to move freely. The drum's heartbeat stirred memories of ceremonial fires and victory dances, of times when he had been counted among the warriors instead of the hunted. But as he watched Morning Star's hands move across the taut hide, he realized the drum spoke differently to him now. "This is White Deer's drum," he said suddenly, recognizing the intricate patterns burned into the wood. "I thought it was lost. When he died, Morning Star's hands stilled on the drum's surface. He gave it to me the night before his last battle, said it had shown him a vision of his death, and that I would know when it needed to speak again." She resumed the slow, steady rhythm. Tonight it called to be heard. The moon cast long shadows across the canyon floor below them, turning the rocks to silver and the junipers to black pillars against the star-filled sky. In the distance, other drums answered, their voices carrying tales of hunt and harvest, war and peace. "The council meets tonight," Morning Star said, her voice blending with the drum's song. "They gather to decide your fate." Running Wolf felt the weight of those words settle around him like a heavy blanket. "How do you know?" "The trading women brought word. 2 Bears has convinced them that you must be found before the army grows. Bold enough to send more patrols into our sacred lands." Her hands never faltered on the drum. "They fear your knowledge of both worlds makes you too dangerous to remain free." "They're not wrong," he admitted. "I know things, patrol routes, weak points in the army's defenses, places where our people could strike if they chose. And yet you've shared none of these secrets, even in your fever dreams." Morning Star's eyes met his, dark and knowing in the moonlight. "Your loyalty remains, even when divided." The drum's rhythm changed subtly, becoming more complex, like rain falling on summer earth. Running Wolf found himself swaying slightly with the beat, his body remembering ceremonies long past. "White Deer was a great war chief," he said, "but he was also a man of peace. He taught me that the drum speaks both languages, war and harmony, and that wisdom lies in knowing which voice to heed." "And which voice do you hear tonight?" Running Wolf closed his eyes, letting the drum's vibrations flow through him like medicine. I hear a new song. Neither war nor peace exactly, but something between, something that speaks of change." Morning Star's hands moved faster on the drum, drawing out a rhythm that made his heart race. "Change comes whether we welcome it or not. The question is whether we let it break us or reshape us into something stronger." A coyote's howl joined the drum's voice, and Running Wolf opened his eyes to find Morning Star watching him intently. The moonlight caught the curves of her face, the strength in her shoulders as she played, and suddenly he couldn't look away. "When I first fell at your feet," he said softly, "I thought the spirits had sent you to ease my passing. I never imagined—" The drum's rhythm faltered for just a moment as their eyes met. In that brief silence, something electric passed between them, something that had been growing since the first moment she had found him dying in the dust. "The spirits rarely send what we expect," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "They send what we need even when we don't recognize it." The drum's voice rose again, but now it sang of different things, of hearts beating in harmony, of paths crossing in the shadow of ancient mountains, of love blooming like desert flowers after rain. Running Wolf moved closer, drawn by something more powerful than caution. "If the council finds me, they won't." Morning Star's certainty was as solid as the mountains themselves. "The spirits didn't bring us together only to tear us apart, and the army will follow false trails until they tire of the chase." Her hands stilled on the drum again, but the echoes of its song remained in the air between them. "There are Places in these mountains that only the oldest stories remember. Places where we could... She left the thought unfinished, but Running Wolf heard all she didn't say. Places where they could build a new life, away from the conflicts of both worlds. Places where healing and love could grow undisturbed. The hunter's moon had risen fully now, turning the world to silver and shadow. In its light, morning stars, beauty struck him like a physical blow. Not just her face and form, but the strength of her spirit, the wisdom in her eyes, the gentleness of her healer's hands mixed with the fierce determination of her heart. Without conscious thought, he reached out and touched her cheek. She leaned into his hand, her skin warm against his palm, and the last barriers between them crumbled like dried clay in the sun. "The drum speaks of many things tonight," she murmured. "But mostly it speaks of change, of endings and beginnings, wrapped together like strands in a ceremonial rope." "What else does it say?" His voice was hoarse with emotion. Morningstar set the drum aside and took his face in both her hands. "It says that some hunts end not in death, but in life. That some warriors find their greatest victories in surrender. That some healers need healing themselves. When their lips met, it was like the first rain after a long drought, like the first ray of sun after the darkest night. The drum lay silent beside them, but their hearts took up its rhythm, beating out an ancient song of love and hope and possibility. Above them, the falcon circled in the moonlight, its cry a blessing on what was beginning here in this sacred place, under the hunter's moon and the watching stars. The sacred pipe lay wrapped in ceremonial cloth between them, its stone bowl dark with the memories of countless prayers. Morningstar had brought it forth as the moon reached its zenith, explaining that some truths could only be spoken in the presence of sacred things. The pipe had belonged to her father, a medicine man who had walked the spirit path when she was still a child. "Before we go further," she said softly, unwrapping the pipe with reverent hands, "there must be complete truth between us. The pipe demands it, and our hearts need it." Running Wolf watched as she prepared the pipe with a mixture of sacred tobacco and herbs. His people believed that smoke carried prayers to the Creator, that words spoken over the pipe held special power. They could not be taken back, nor could they hide lies beneath their surface. "I haven't smoked a sacred pipe since before White River," he admitted. "I feared I was no longer worthy." Morningstar's hands moved with practiced grace as she completed the preparation. "Worthiness isn't something we lose like a knife from. A sheath. It lives in our actions, our choices, our truth." She looked up at him. "Are you ready to speak your full truth to me, as I will to you?" He nodded, his throat tight with emotion. She lit the pipe with a coal from their small fire, offering the first smoke to the 6 directions, 4 winds, earth, and sky. Then she took a deep draw and passed it to him. The familiar ritual calmed his racing heart. As the smoke filled his lungs, he felt the pipe's medicine begin to work, clearing his mind like wind, clearing storm clouds from the mountain peaks. "I need to tell you about the night at White River," he began. "The full story that I've never told anyone." Morningstar sat perfectly still, holding the space for his words. The pipe passed between them as he spoke, each draw bringing deeper truth to the surface. "Lieutenant Matthews wasn't just my commanding officer. He was my friend. Or I thought. He was. He taught me to read English, shared meals with me, listened to my ideas about bringing peace between our peoples." Running Wolf's voice grew heavy with memory. "The night we found the families, I saw something change in his eyes. Something hard and cold like winter ice." He passed the pipe back to Morningstar, watching the sacred smoke rise in spirals toward the cave's roof. "When he gave the order to attack, I saw the future as clearly as a vision. More families dead, more children crying, more hatred growing between our peoples. And I knew I had to choose." "You chose life," Morningstar said softly, "even knowing the cost." "The arrow I shot." He touched his shoulder where Matthews's saber had cut him in return. I aimed to wound, not kill. Even then I couldn't bring myself to take his life. But when the families scattered into the darkness, I saw something else in his eyes, understanding, just for a moment before the soldier in him took over again. The pipe completed another circle between them. Outside, an owl called, its voice carrying wisdom from the night. "Now I must share my truth," Morning Star said, her voice steady but touched with sadness. "The council has sent word through the medicine women. They offer clemency if you will guide the army into an ambush. They believe your return would convince the soldiers to lower their guard." Running Wolf felt the weight of this revelation settle in his chest. "And if I refuse, then they will continue to hunt you, and—" She took a deep breath. "And any who help you will be considered enemies of the people." The pipe smoke seemed to thicken around them, carrying the weight of decisions yet to be made. Running Wolf studied Morningstar's face in the dim light, seeing the strength there, the unwavering commitment to her path as a healer. "I won't ask you to choose between your people and me," he said quietly. "You don't have to." She set the pipe down carefully, its medicine complete for now. "I made my choice the moment I found you dying in the dust. The spirits led me to you for a reason, and I've seen that reason grow clearer with each passing day." Running Wolf reached across the space between them, taking her hands in his. They were healer's hands, strong and gentle at once, marked with the herbs and medicines that were her life's work. "But your medicine," he protested. "Your people need your healing." "Medicine finds its own way," she replied. "Perhaps we're meant to start something new, something that bridges the gap between old ways and new understanding. The pipe has shown me visions of such a future." He drew her closer, until their foreheads touched in the traditional greeting of their people. "What kind of visions?" "A place in the high mountains, where both peoples could come for healing, where ancient wisdom and new knowledge flow together like streams joining to form a river, where children learn both the old stories and new ways of understanding the world." The vision caught him like wind catching an eagle's wings, lifting his spirit above the immediate dangers they faced. He saw what she described, a future built not on division and hatred, but on healing and hope. "It won't be easy," he warned. "Both sides will resist such change." Morningstar's smile held all the wisdom of her namesake. "When has anything worth doing ever been easy?" The sacred pipe lay cooling beside them, its medicine already working in their hearts. Running Wolf felt its effects in the clarity of his thoughts, in the certainty of his feelings for this remarkable woman who had saved more than just his body. "There are caves in the western mountains," he said slowly, "places I found during my years of scouting, places even Two Bears doesn't know about. We could—" "Yes," she said simply, "we could." Their lips met again, sealing this new truth between them. The pipe had done its work, bringing honesty into the open, showing them a path forward through the darkness. Outside, the owl called again, and this time its voice seemed to carry blessing rather than warning. Morning Star wrapped the pipe reverently in its ceremonial cloth, tucking it away with her other sacred items. But its medicine remained in the air around them, in the promises they had made, in the future they had chosen to build together. The night deepened around their mountain shelter, but neither of them felt the need for sleep. There were plans to make, preparations to consider, and a new path to walk together under the watching eyes of the stars. The spirit mask hung between them in the pre-dawn darkness, its weathered wooden surface catching glimmers of dying firelight. Carved from lightning-struck pine and painted with sacred ochre, it bore the visage of the mountain spirit, keeper of wisdom, guardian of sacred places. Morning Star had carried it wrapped in her medicine bundle since the beginning of their journey, waiting for the right moment to unveil its power. "A vision quest?" Running Wolf asked, his voice hushed with reverence. "Here, now. The spirits don't wait for convenient times," she replied, preparing the ceremonial space with sage and cedar. "They speak when they must be heard, And now, before we choose our path forward, we need their guidance more than ever. The mask's hollow eyes seemed to hold shadows deeper than mere darkness. Running Wolf had participated in vision quests before, but always under the guidance of tribal elders, always within the prescribed ceremonies. This felt different, more immediate, more dangerous. Without a medicine man to guide us. "I am a healer," Morningstar said firmly, "trained in the old ways by my grandmother. And you," she touched his chest above his heart, "you have already walked between worlds. The spirits know you." She lifted the mask, its features transforming in the shifting light. This mask belonged to the first medicine woman of our band. She wore it when she learned the secrets of healing from the mountain spirits themselves. Since then, it has been passed down through generations of healers, used only in times of greatest need. Running Wolf watched as she laid out the sacred items needed for the ceremony: eagle feathers, white sage, a small drum, crystals from the heart of the mountains. Each object held its own power, its own connection to the spirit world. "What if the spirits reject me?" he whispered. "After everything I've done." Morningstar's hands stilled in their work. "The spirits don't judge as men do. They see the truth in our hearts, the paths we're meant to walk." She met his eyes. "And they've already been speaking to us. Through the falcon, through the healing, through every coincidence that brought us together." The mask seemed to watch them as she completed the preparations. Outside, the sky was beginning to lighten, that sacred time between night and dawn when the veil between worlds grew thin. "Are you ready?" she asked, lifting the mask. Running Wolf took a deep breath, steadying himself. "What must I do?" "Simply be open. Let the medicine work. I'll guide you with the drum and my voice, but where you go and what you see, that's between you and the spirits." She placed the mask over his face, and immediately the world changed. Through its eye holes, everything took on a different quality, sharper, more vibrant, charged with meaning. The wood seemed to mold itself to his features, becoming a second skin. Morningstar's drum began to beat, a slow rhythm like a heart in deep sleep. Her voice rose in an ancient song, words so old their meaning had been lost to all but the medicine people. Running Wolf felt the mask grow warmer against his skin, felt something stirring in the air around him. The cave walls dissolved, replaced by vast landscapes of spirit. He saw the mountains as they truly were, not just rock and earth, but living beings, ancient and wise. He saw the paths of power that ran through the land like veins of gold, carrying wisdom and medicine to those who knew how to listen. And he saw himself and Morningstar, their spirits glowing like stars fallen to earth, but they weren't alone. Other lights moved around them, the ancestors, the spirit guides, the mountain people themselves. They danced through the vision like wind through summer leaves, leaving traces of knowledge in their wake. A great eagle appeared, its wings spanning the sky. It spoke without words, showing him images of what could be, a place of healing where the old ways and new knowledge flowed together, a sanctuary where both peoples could find peace and understanding. He saw children learning the ancient stories. Alongside new skills, saw wisdom being preserved and transformed rather than lost. But then the vision darkened. He saw the dangers that lay ahead, soldiers closing in, tribal hunters drawing near, the narrow path they would have to walk between destruction and survival. The mask grew heavier on his face, pressing the truth into his very bones. Through it all, Morningstar's drumbeat held him steady, her voice weaving a path he could follow back if the visions became too overwhelming. He felt her presence like a warm fire in a cold night, a beacon guiding him home. Finally, the mountain spirit itself appeared, ancient and powerful as the peaks themselves. It showed him one last vision, a ceremony yet to come, where the divide between peoples began to heal, where understanding grew like spring grass after winter snows. When Morningstar gently lifted the mask from his face, Running Wolf found his cheeks wet with tears. The cave had grown lighter, dawn's first rays painting the walls with gold. She set aside her drum and cradled his face in her hands, reading, the truth of his journey in his eyes. "What did you see?" she asked softly. "Everything," he whispered. "The path ahead, both its promise and its perils. The Spirit showed me that what we dream is possible, but the price will be high." She nodded, unsurprised. "The greatest medicines often come at the greatest cost. What else?" "I saw us creating something new. Not Apache, not white, but something that bridges both worlds, a place of healing, of learning, of—" He struggled to find the words, "of transformation." Morningstar's eyes shone with her own vision. "Yes, the spirits have been showing me pieces of this future since I first found you. Now we see it clearly together." Running Wolf looked at the spirit mask, now resting quietly in its wrappings. Its power lingered in the air, a tangible reminder of the sacred world that existed alongside their own. "We'll need to leave soon," he said, "before the dawn grows too bright." "Yes." She began gathering their medicines and sacred items. "But now we go with the Spirit's blessing, with a clear vision of our path." The mask disappeared into her medicine bundle, but its presence remained with them, a guardian for the journey ahead. Outside, the falcon's cry heralded the new day, and somewhere in the distance they heard the faint sound of horses. The hunt would continue, but now they had something greater than fear to guide them. They had purpose, vision, and the blessing of the mountain spirit itself. Running Wolf took Morningstar's hand, feeling the power of their combined medicine flow between them like a river of light. Dawn broke over the mountains, and with it came the certainty of their chosen path, dangerous, beautiful, and necessary as the first light of day. The tracking rope uncoiled like a serpent in two bears' hands, each knot and bead telling its own story of the hunt. For generations, Apache trackers had used such ropes to record the signs they found. A knot for a footprint, a red bead for blood, a white one for a broken branch. Now, as he studied the pattern of the past hour's pursuit, his weathered face showed both respect and concern. "They're moving west," he told the army lieutenant riding beside him, "but something has changed. The tracks are deeper, more purposeful. They're no longer just running." From their hidden vantage point high above the trail, Morningstar and Running Wolf watched the search party pass. Her hand found his in the shadows of the juniper grove, squeezing gently. "Two bears read sign better than anyone," Running Wolf whispered. "He'll know we're heading for the high country." "Let him know," Morningstar replied, her voice calm despite the danger. "By the time they understand our true path, we'll be beyond their reach." The morning sun had barely cleared the eastern peaks, but already the day's heat pressed down on the canyon lands. Running Wolf felt sweat trickle down his back, saw it darken Two Bear's shirt below. The tracking rope swayed with each step of the tracker's horse, its beads catching the light like drops of water. "There," Two Bears called out suddenly, pointing to something only he could read in the dust. "The woman's tracks join his here. She's not just helping him now, she's traveling with him." He turned to the lieutenant, his face grave. "This changes things." The officer's hand moved to his pistol. "Changes nothing. She's chosen her side. When we find them. Two Bears cut in, his voice sharp as flint. "We will remember that she is a healer of our people, taught by Spotted Owl herself. Some matters are for the tribe to settle." Running Wolf felt Morningstar's grip tighten. Below them, the tracking rope swung in a sudden gust of wind, its beads clicking together like tiny bones. "We need to move," she whispered. "They'll circle back along the ridge." They crept backward through the junipers, every movement calculated, to prevent stones from rolling or branches from snapping. The falcon soared overhead, its shadow passing over the search party like a silent warning. When they reached their cache supplies, Morningstar pulled out her own tracking rope, not for hunting, but for finding the secret paths her grandmother had taught her. Its beads were darker, stained with medicines and marked with symbols of healing rather than hunting. The old ways serve new purposes, she said, reading the patterns with practiced eyes. 3 ravines north, then up through the spirit caves. There's a path there that 2 bears' rope won't reveal. Running Wolf shouldered their waterskins, hearing the precious liquid slosh within. The spirit caves are sacred ground. Even 2 bears won't follow us there. No, she agreed, looping her rope back into its protective wrapping, but the army might. We'll need to be swift. They moved through the morning like shadows, using every trick Running Wolf had learned from both his peoples. Where they had to leave tracks, they left them boldly, as if heading west toward the desert lands. But their true path led north and up, following Morning Star's medicine rope into increasingly rocky terrain. The sun had reached its zenith when they heard the first echoing shot. The sound bounced off canyon walls, making it impossible to tell how far back the search party was. "They've found our false trail," Running Wolf said, helping Morning Star, "over a particularly treacherous stretch of rock. 2 bears will know it's false, but it will take time to convince the soldiers." Morning Star paused at the top of the rise, her tracking rope held out like a divining rod. "The spirit caves are just ahead. Once inside—" She turned to him, her eyes bright with certainty. "Once inside, we'll be in the ancestors' hands." Behind them, another shot rang out, closer this time. The falcon screamed a warning from above, and they heard the distant sound of horses moving fast over rocky ground. "Come," Morning Star said, reaching for his hand. "The spirits await." They ran together toward the sacred caves, leaving behind 2 bears and his hunting rope, the army with their guns, and all the old ways of thinking that had led them to this moment. Above them, the falcon flew ahead, like an arrow pointing true north, leading them to whatever fate the spirits had prepared. The council staff appeared like a ghost in the dim light of the spirit cave, its ancient wood adorned with eagle feathers, its surface carved with the stories of 100 generations. Grey Wolf, eldest of the tribal council, emerged from the shadows holding it before him like a torch. His presence here, in this sacred place, spoke of matters beyond mere hunting or tribal law. "So," the old man said, his voice rough as canyon, "stones, the spirits have led me true." His eyes moved from Morning Star to Running Wolf, showing neither anger nor welcome. "The council's medicine dreamers saw you seeking shelter in the sacred caves, but I had to see for myself." Morning Star stepped forward, her chin lifted in quiet defiance. "Uncle," she said, for Grey Wolf was indeed her mother's brother, "you walk dangerous ground. These caves are for healing, not judgment." The elder's grip tightened on the council staff. "And what healing occurs here, niece? The healing of a deserter's wounds, the mending of broken oaths." "The healing of something broken in all of us," she replied. "The mending of the divide between peoples." Running Wolf watched the interplay between them, seeing the power of blood and duty war with deeper truths. The council staff trembled slightly in Grey Wolf's aged hands, not from weakness, but from the weight of the decision he carried. "The spirits showed us a path," Running Wolf said quietly. "A future where healing flows between both peoples, where ancient wisdom and new knowledge join like streams forming a river." Grey Wolf's eyes snapped to him, sharp as obsidian blades. "And what do you know of our wisdom? You who wore the blue, a coat? Who carried their weapons and spoke their words?" "I know that wisdom doesn't belong to any one people." Running Wolf met the elder's gaze steadily. "I know that the same sun warms all our backs, that the same rain feeds all our crops. And I know that hatred is a poison that sickens everyone it touches." The council staff's feathers stirred in a breath of wind that shouldn't have existed so deep in the cave. Grey Wolf looked down at them, his expression troubled. "The council demands your return," he said finally. "They believe your knowledge of army ways could save many lives. By leading soldiers into ambush," Morning Star's voice was cold. "By trading one betrayal for another? That is not our way." "Our way?" Grey Wolf lifted the staff, its carvings catching the dim light. "Our way is survival, niece. Our way is protecting our people by any means necessary. No. Morning Star moved closer to Running Wolf, taking his hand. Our way is wisdom, honor, healing. The staff you hold tells our true history, not just of wars and hunts, but of peacemakings, of marriages between tribes, of enemies becoming brothers. Something shifted in Grey Wolf's face, a softening around the eyes, a loosening of his grip on the staff. "You sound like your grandmother," he said softly. "She too spoke of bridges between peoples, of healing old wounds. The council called her a dreamer, and yet they sought her wisdom," Morningstar pressed. "They came to her for healing, for guidance, for medicine that worked whether the patient was Apache or white." The council staff dipped toward the cave floor as Grey Wolf's shoulders sagged slightly. "What would you have me tell them?" "Tell them what you've seen here," Running Wolf said. "Tell them that the spirits themselves have blessed a new path, that sometimes the greatest victory comes not from fighting, but from finding a better way." Grey Wolf was silent for a long moment, the staff's feathers whispering against stone. Finally he straightened, his voice taking on the formal tones of council speech. "3 days," he said. "I will tell them I found only empty caves, cold ashes. That will give you time to reach the high country." He looked at Morning Star, his eyes soft with memory. "Your grandmother would be proud, little one. She always said you would walk a different path." "Uncle—" Morning Star stepped forward to embrace him, but he held up his hand. "No. What I don't see, I can't tell. Go now, while the moon hides her face, and may your medicine grow strong in whatever valley claims you." He turned to leave, the council staff marking his passage through the darkness. At the cave's mouth, he paused one last time. "The army follows Two Bears' lead," he said without turning. "But even Two Bears cannot track those who walk with the spirits." Then he was gone, leaving them alone in the sacred cave with the echo of his words, and the blessing he hadn't quite given, but hadn't withheld either. The unity blanket glowed in the sacred cave's darkness, its intricate patterns telling stories of love surviving against impossible odds. Woven by Morningstar's grandmother decades ago, its design merged Apache symbols with threads traded from Mexican travelers, creating something both ancient and new. Now, in the deepest hour of night, Morningstar spread it on the cave floor. Between them, "My grandmother wove this for my parents' union ceremony," she said softly, her fingers tracing the complex patterns. "She said that love, like weaving, is strongest when it brings together different threads." Running Wolf knelt beside her, feeling the power of the moment settle around them like falling snow. After Grey Wolf's departure, they had spent hours in preparation, gathering specific herbs, saying certain prayers, preparing their hearts for what was to come. "Are you sure?" he asked, though he already knew her answer. "Once done, this cannot be undone." Morningstar's smile held all the certainty of the dawn. "The spirits themselves led us here, to this cave, to this moment, and my heart." She placed her hand over her chest. "My heart has been sure since I first found you in the dust." The falcon's cry echoed from somewhere deep in the cave system, an impossible sound that sent shivers down their spines. Morningstar's eyes widened. "The spirits watch," she whispered. "They come to witness." She reached into her medicine pouch and brought out sacred herbs, spreading them at the blanket's 4 corners. Running Wolf recognized them. Sage for purification, cedar for blessing, sweetgrass for binding souls together. "In the old days," she said as she worked, "unions like this would have been celebrated by the whole tribe. There would have been feasting, dancing, songs to bless the new couple." Her voice held no regret, only quiet conviction. "But tonight, the ancestors themselves are our witnesses." Running Wolf helped her lay out the ceremonial items: an earthen bowl of clear spring water, a bundle of eagle feathers, a small clay pot of red ochre. Each object had its own medicine, its own part in the ceremony. "I have no bride price to offer," he said softly. "No horses, no blankets, no gifts for your family. You offer something far more precious. She dipped her finger in the ochre. You offer a new way forward, a bridge between worlds, a chance to heal old wounds. She drew a sacred symbol over his heart. That is worth more than all the horses on the plains. He caught her hand, holding it against his chest, where the ochre mark burned like a brand. I offer my life, my love, my truth, everything I am or will be. And I offer the same. She guided his hand to the ochre, helped him draw the matching symbol over her heart. All that I am, all that I know, all that I may become. Together, they wrapped the unity blanket around their shoulders, its woven patterns seeming to move in the dim light like living things. Morning Star began to sing softly, an ancient marriage song, its words carrying power gathered through countless generations. Running Wolf joined her, his deeper voice harmonizing with hers. As they sang, something shifted in the air around them. The cave walls seemed to pulse with soft light, and shadows moved at the edges of their vision, spirit dancers, ancestor witnesses, the gathered power of all who had come before. They shared the sacred water, each drinking from the earthen bowl. They exchanged blessings with the eagle feathers, brushing away doubt and fear, drawing down the spirit's protection. And finally, they spoke the ancient vows. Not just the traditional words, but new ones as well, promises that bridged old ways and new dreams. I bind myself to you, Morningstar said. Not as a wife only, but as a partner in healing, in building, in finding new paths through shadow. I bind myself to you, Running Wolf answered, not as a husband only, but as a defender of wisdom, a keeper of balance, a builder of bridges between worlds. The unity blanket seemed to tighten around them of its own accord, drawing them closer, together. When their lips met, the kiss tasted of cedar smoke and destiny. From deep in the cave came the sound of drums, spirit drums that no human hands played. The falcon cried out again, its voice joined by ghostly singers echoing through stone passages. The ancestors gave their blessing in the only way they could. Dawn was still hours away, and somewhere out there, hunters still searched. But here, wrapped in the unity blanket's embrace, Morning Star and Running Wolf had found something stronger than fear, more enduring than hatred. They had found a love that could heal not just two hearts, but two peoples. The blanket's patterns glowed once more, then settled into quiet witness of what had been joined beneath the sacred mountain. The war shield's surface caught the first light of dawn, its painted symbols seeming to move in the growing brightness. Found hidden in a corner of the spirit cave, the ancient shield had once belonged to a great peace chief who used it not to wage war, but to protect those seeking sanctuary. Now, Running Wolf held it before them as they crept through the shadow-filled canyon, its medicine their last defense against the closing hunters. Riders, Morningstar whispered, her hand tightening on his arm. From both directions. The sound of hooves on stone echoed through the canyon, ahead and behind. The noose, drawing tight. Running Wolf shifted the shield's weight, feeling the power of its protective symbols thrum against his palm. The shield's face showed an eagle holding both an arrow and an olive branch, a prophecy in paint and sinew of the choice they now faced. "They're herding us," he said grimly. "Two bears must have found our trail in the night." Morningstar's eyes darted between the canyon walls, reading possibilities in the rock face. "There?" She pointed to a narrow crack, barely visible in the cliff face. "My grandmother showed me this path when I was young. It leads to the high meadows." A shot cracked through the morning air, the bullet sparking off stone far too close. To their position, Running Wolf raised the war shield instinctively, its ancient surface reflecting the growing light like a signal mirror. "Up there!" a voice shouted. "The shield! I saw something flash!" They ran for the hidden path, Morning Star leading, while Running Wolf brought up the rear, the war shield held ready against more shots. The crack in the rock face was narrow, almost too narrow for the shield to pass through, but Morning Star's grandmother had spoken true. A path wound upward through the stone, worn smooth by generations of secret passage. "Hold here," Running Wolf said as they reached a wider section of the path. Below, they could hear the frustration in the soldiers' voices as horses were pulled. Up short, at the cliff base. "They can't follow with horses," Morningstar said, catching her breath. "But two bears will know there are handholds." Running Wolf finished. "We need to keep moving." Another shot echoed through the canyon, followed by Lieutenant Matthews's voice. "That shield belongs in a museum, Scout, along with the rest of your dying culture." The shield seemed to grow warmer in Running Wolf's hands, its symbols brightening, as if with inner fire. Morningstar touched its surface gently, reading the stories painted there. "This shield has seen worse than him," she said softly. "It survived the Spanish, the Mexican armies, and 100 years of war. Its medicine is protection, not just of the body, but of what truly matters." As if in response to her words, the shield's surface caught the sunlight and reflected it downward, directly into the eyes of the searching soldiers. Curses and surprised shouts rose from below. "The path splits ahead," Morningstar said, already moving upward again. "One way leads to the meadows, the other—" A rope snaked down from above, uncoiling like a striking rattler. Two Bear's voice followed it. "The medicine woman speaks truth about paths, but forgets that old trails have many entrances." Running Wolf raised the war shield just as Two Bears dropped from his perch, the tracker's knife scraping across the ancient surface with a sound like thunder. They grappled in the narrow space, the shield between them, neither able to gain proper footing on the worn path. "Brother," Two Bears grunted, his free hand finding purchase on the shield's edge. "It's not too late. The Council will show mercy if you help us now." Running Wolf met the tracker's eyes over the shield's rim. "The time for that kind of mercy is past. A new way is coming, whether we choose it or not." Morningstar's voice rose in a sudden cry, not of fear, but of power. The falcon swept through the narrow gap above them, its wings nearly brushing the stone walls. Two Bears instinctively ducked, his grip on the shield loosening just enough. Running Wolf heaved upward with all his strength, not to throw Two Bears back, but to push him sideways into the wider part of the path. The tracker stumbled but kept his feet, his knife still ready. "Go!" Running Wolf called to Morningstar. "I'll hold here." But she was already moving, not away but to his side, her medicine bag open, her hands filled with something that smoked and sparkled in the growing light. The war shield thrummed with ancient power, recognizing the coming together of old protection and new medicine, as the sun rose over the canyon rim and choices made long ago came due at last. The night crystal pulsed with inner light as morning. Star held it aloft, its faceted surface casting strange shadows through the mountain mist. This sacred stone, passed down through generations of healers, was said to absorb starlight and release it in times of greatest darkness. Now, trapped in the shadowed valley with pursuit closing from all sides, its pale blue radiance meant the difference between survival and capture. Two Bears' voice carried through the fog behind them. "The woman uses old magic. Hold your fire. We take them alive." Running Wolf's grip tightened on the war shield as he followed Morningstar through the gloom. The crystal's light showed them safe passages between treacherous drops, its glow strengthening whenever danger lurked nearby. His wounded shoulder, torn in the struggle with Two Bears, throbbed with each step. "The valley grows narrower." "Morning," Star whispered, the crystal flickering as she tested their path. "The old stories say there's a cave system ahead, but—" She hesitated, her free hand finding his in the darkness. "The spirits grow restless here." As if confirming her words, the mist around them took on shapes, ghostly dancers, spirit warriors, the shades of those who had died defending these sacred lands. The night crystal's light scattered through their translucent forms, creating a ethereal display that made even Running Wolf's warrior heart quail. "Your grandmother," he asked softly, "did she tell you what else dwells in this valley?" Morning Star's face was grave in the crystal's glow. Only that some places remember, that the earth itself holds the echoes of every battle, every prayer, every moment of triumph or despair. This valley, she swept the crystal in an arc, revealing more spirit forms in the mist. This is where our people made their last stand against the Spanish generations ago. A shot rang out, closer now, the bullet whining off stone somewhere to their left. The crystal flared brilliant blue in warning, and they pressed themselves against the valley wall just as more shots followed. "There!" Lieutenant Matthews's voice cut through the fog. "I saw the light converge on that position." But the night crystal's warning had come in time. They were already moving, following its guidance through the treacherous landscape. The spirit forms seemed to move with them now. No longer just memories, but active presences, swirling through the mist in patterns that confused and misdirected their pursuers. "Look," Morningstar breathed, raising the crystal higher. Ahead, a dark opening gaped in the valley wall, its entrance partially hidden by a fall of rocks. But it wasn't the cave that made Running Wolf's breath catch. It was what waited before it. A figure stood there, translucent in the crystal's light, but undeniably real. Grey Wolf, as he would have appeared in his prime, dressed in the regalia of a medicine chief. "Uncle?" Morningstar's voice trembled. "Not your uncle." "Running," Wolf said quietly. "The first Grey Wolf, the one who led our people to safety through these caves during the Spanish Wars." The spirit raised his hands in welcome, and the night crystal blazed with sudden power, illuminating the cave entrance with brilliant clarity. Behind them, they heard shouts of confusion as their pursuers became entangled in the maze of spirit, forms, and shifting mist. "He shows us the way," Morningstar said, her voice strengthening with certainty. "As he did for our ancestors." They moved toward the cave entrance, the crystal's light steadying as they approached. The spirit of Grey. Wolf seemed to smile, a fierce, proud expression that reminded Running Wolf of Morningstar's own determination. "The soldiers won't follow," he said, understanding coming clear as spring water. "This place holds too much power, too many memories. Even 2 bears will hesitate to pursue us into the sacred caves." Another volley of shots rang out, but they seemed distant now, separated from them by more than just mist and stone. The spirit forms grew thicker around them, forming an honor guard that led to the cave's mouth. Just before they entered the darkness, Morningstar turned back one last time, holding the night crystal high. Its light swept across the valley, revealing dozens, then hundreds of spirit forms, all of them standing witness, all of them holding back the pursuers with the weight of history and memory. "We are not alone," she whispered, her free hand clasping Running Wolf's. "We never were." The night crystal's glow led them forward into the cave's depths, its ancient power merging with the medicines they carried and the love they shared. Behind them, the mist closed like a curtain, and the spirits of the valley stood guard over the newest chapter in their people's long story of survival and transformation. The peace pipe lay between them like a bridge across a chasm, its polished stone, bowl and carved stem bearing witness to 100 years of treaties, truces and promises, both kept and broken. Morningstar had unwrapped it as they emerged from the cave system into a high meadow ringed by ancient pines, where Lieutenant Matthews and 2 bears waited with their men. "So it ends here," Matthews said, his voice carrying across the morning air. His left shoulder still bore the scar from Running Wolf's arrow, visible even beneath his uniform. "Though I admit, I never expected to find myself in a peace talk with a deserter." 2 bears stood slightly apart from the soldiers, his face unreadable as he studied the peace pipe. He recognized it. All the tribal elders would. This was the pipe that had sealed the last great peace between the Apache bands and the Spanish. Crown before the Americans came. Its appearance here was both a challenge and an opportunity. "Not a deserter," Morningstar said, her voice clear and strong. "A bridge builder, as our ancestors were before us." She gestured to the pipe. This pipe has witnessed greater hatreds turn to understanding. It can do so again. Running Wolf stepped forward, the war shield now slung across his back. Lieutenant, you taught me to read English. Do you remember the first book you gave? Me. Matthew's hand remained near his pistol, but something flickered in his eyes. Benjamin Franklin's autobiography. You said his ideas about different peoples working together made sense. They still do. Running Wolf moved closer to the pipe, his movements deliberate and non-threatening. What happened at White River? It doesn't have to be repeated. There's another way. Two Bears spoke for the first time, his words careful. The council has heard of your vision, a place of healing, where both peoples could learn from each other. His eyes moved to Morning Star. Your grandmother spoke of such things. More than spoke of them, she replied. She prepared for them. The medicines I carry, the knowledge she passed down, they combine the wisdom of both worlds, as do his experiences. She nodded toward Running Wolf. Together we can build something new. Matthews shifted in his saddle, but his hand moved away from his weapon. The army won't simply forget. The army, Running Wolf interrupted, needs peace in these territories as much as our people do. You know the cost of this endless cycle of violence, Lieutenant. You've buried enough men. A wind swept across the meadow, carrying the scent of pine and sage. The peace pipe seemed to gather the morning light, its surface gleaming with quiet power. Morning Star knelt beside it, beginning the sacred preparations. This pipe has seen the future of these lands in smoke and shadow. It knows that the old ways of war must yield to new ways of understanding. Who will share its medicine with us? For a long moment, no one moved. The soldiers looked to Matthews, the tribal trackers to Two Bears. The fate of more than just two people hung in the balance of this moment. Then Two Bears dismounted, his movements as fluid as water. I will. Smoke. He looked at Matthews. Unless you prefer more blood on these mountains. The lieutenant's face worked through a complex series of emotions. Finally, he swung down from his horse. My superiors will want guarantees. As will the council. Two Bears agreed. Then let us make them together, Running Wolf said, joining. Morning Star beside the pipe. Not as enemies, not as divided peoples, but as those who choose a better path. The ceremony that followed was ancient and new at once. Morning Star blended traditional tobacco with healing herbs, speaking prayers in both Apache and English. The pipe passed from hand to hand, first to Running Wolf, then Two Bears, then Matthews, and finally among the other men present. As the sacred smoke rose into the morning air, Morning Star's voice rose with it. Let all who witness remember this day. Let them remember that hatred yields to hope, that old wounds can heal, that bridges can be built with courage and understanding. The peace pipe completed its circle, returning to rest in its place between worlds. In its smooth surface, they could all see their reflections, changed now, softened by the medicine of possibility. Matthews cleared his throat. There will need to be discussions, arrangements. Yes, Two Bears agreed, but the hard part? He looked at Running Wolf and Morning Star, standing together in the morning light. The hard part is done. They have shown us the way. The peace pipe smoke continued to rise, carrying their words, their promises, their newfound understanding up into the endless blue of the mountain sky. The sunrise feather caught the first light of dawn, its golden red surface shimmering with promise. 4 weeks had passed since the peace pipe ceremony, and Morning Star held this new token, a feather from their faithful falcon companion, as she and Running Wolf stood before the tribal council. The feather had fallen at their feet that very morning, a sign from the spirits themselves. Grey Wolf rose from his seat among the elders, the council staff in his hands. The army has kept their word, he announced. Lieutenant Matthews speaks for you both. A place has been granted where healing and learning may grow together. His eyes, bright with unshed tears, found morning stars. Your grandmother's dream takes root at last. Running Wolf stepped forward, his warrior's stance now tempered with a healer's grace. We will honor both ways, he said, the old medicines and the new learning, brought together like streams joining to form a mighty river. Morning Star lifted the sunrise feather, its colors painting her fingers with light. The falcon brought us together, she said softly. Now it gives us this blessing for our new beginning. The council members nodded, one by one. Even Two Bears, standing at the back of the gathering, raised his hand in approval. The dream that had seemed impossible now spread before them like the dawn itself, a future where understanding would grow stronger than hatred, where healing would triumph over hurt. Above them, the falcon circled once more, its cry a benediction for all that was to come. The unity rope glinted with beads of both worlds, glass traded from the army posts, woven together with traditional shell and stone. Morning Star and Running Wolf stood before their joined peoples as Grey Wolf wrapped the rope around their joined hands, binding them officially before both tribes and settlers. Lieutenant Matthews stood witness alongside Two Bears, their presence symbolic of the greater peace this union represented. The ceremony combined elements of both cultures. Apache prayers mingled with Christian hymns, military protocol stood alongside tribal tradition. This rope binds more than two hearts, Grey Wolf proclaimed, his voice carrying across the gathered crowd. It binds two peoples, two ways of knowing, two paths becoming one. His weathered hands completed the ceremonial knot. As this rope cannot be broken without destroying its beauty, so may this union strengthen all it touches. Morning Star and Running Wolf turned to face their people, Apache families sitting alongside army officers, tribal healers next to military doctors, two worlds meeting in the shadow of the mountains that had once divided them. The unity rope caught the light as they raised their bound hands, its beads throwing fragments of rainbow across the gathering. Above them, the falcon circled, its cry joining with the cheers and songs of celebration. In that moment, watching the happiness on faces that had once been set in hatred, they knew that every step of their difficult journey had led them true. The rope that bound them was more than ceremony. It was promise, purpose, and the dawn of a new way forward. The memory stone rested in Morning Star's hands, its surface worn smooth by generations of storytellers. 5 years had passed since the unity ceremony, and the healing center they'd built in the High Valley had become a place of legend. Now, as she sat before a circle of children, some Apache, some white, all eager to learn, she held out the stone for them to see. "This stone remembers," she told them, her voice gentle as falling snow. "It remembers a warrior who chose peace over violence, truth over safety. It remembers a love strong enough to bridge two worlds." Running Wolf entered the teaching circle, wearing both the medicine pouch of a healer and the bearing of a warrior. The children's eyes widened as he sat beside his wife, their hands meeting over the memory stone. "The stone remembers more," he said, smiling. "It remembers how enemies became brothers, how fear turned to understanding, how hatred yielded to hope." He looked out over the valley where Apache teepees stood alongside wooden cabins, where healing herbs grew in gardens tended by both peoples. "And it will remember all of you, carrying this wisdom forward." Above them, a young falcon, offspring of their old friend, wheeled against the azure sky. The memory stone caught its shadow, adding one more story to its ancient surface. As the children leaned forward to touch the stone, Morning Star and Running Wolf shared a quiet look of triumph. Their legacy would live on, not in war or division, but in the eternal spirit of healing, understanding, and love.